Throughout history, witches have inspired fear, fascination, and countless legends. But the real stories behind the myths are far darker than fiction. These were real people, often women, accused of forbidden knowledge, dark rituals, and dealings with powers beyond understanding. Many faced persecution, torture, and even death, their lives marked by hysteria, superstition, and societal fear. From secret gatherings and mysterious trials to whispered tales of curses and magic, their stories haunt history. In this video, we explore the terrifying true lives of witches whose legends have endured for centuries, revealing haunting fates that are stranger and darker than fiction. Witches have fascinated humanity for centuries, appearing in folklore, literature, and popular culture as mystical figures with magical powers. But beneath the colorful tales lies a much darker reality. Real-life witches were often women, or occasionally men, accused of practices deemed dangerous, heretical, or unnatural. Their lives were shaped not by fairy tale magic, but by fear, superstition, and the anxieties of the societies around them. The stories of witches with haunting legends and dark fates reveal more than individual misdeeds or supernatural claims. They illuminate the social, political, and religious conditions that allowed hysteria to flourish. Across Europe, the British Isles, and colonial America, tens of thousands of people were accused of witchcraft. Many were tortured, executed, or publicly humiliated, often for reasons entirely unrelated to magic. These tales of real witches reflect society's deepest fears: the power of independent women, the threat of outsiders, the dangers of unexplained illness or disaster, and the anxieties of communities seeking scapegoats. In exploring these stories, we uncover not only tragedy and terror, but also resilience, cunning, and the enduring power of legend. Alice Kyteler, Ireland's wealthy witch. Alice Kyteler, accused in 1324, is remembered as Ireland's first recorded witch. She was a wealthy woman in Kilkenny, married 4 times, with each husband mysteriously dying. Her financial independence, intelligence, and influence provoked jealousy and suspicion in a deeply patriarchal society. Bishop Richard de Ladrede accused Alice of heresy, sorcery, and consorting with demons. Allegations included animal sacrifices, secret rituals, and keeping a demon familiar in the form of a black cat. Alice fled Ireland to avoid prosecution, but her maid, Petronilla of Meath, was tortured and burned at the stake after confessing, likely under duress. Alice's story is haunting not because of magical deeds, but because of how societal fear transformed an independent woman into a legendary witch. Wealth, autonomy, and defiance of social norms became crimes in themselves, showing how hysteria can manufacture terror from envy and prejudice. Agnes Sampson, Scotland's persecuted healer. In 1590, Scotland experienced one of its most notorious waves of witchcraft hysteria, the North Berwick Trials. Agnes Sampson, a respected midwife and healer, was accused of plotting to harm King James VI through supernatural means. She allegedly raised storms to threaten his ship and led gatherings of witches who worship Satan. Agnes endured brutal torture. She was shaved, pricked for the devil's mark, bound in tight ropes, and interrogated until she confessed to crimes she likely never committed. She was executed in 1591, her life extinguished by fear, politics, and superstition. Agnes Sampson's story highlights a recurring pattern. Women with knowledge, especially knowledge tied to healing, medicine, or spirituality, could be recast as dangerous threats. Fear, more than evidence, dictated her fate, creating a haunting legend of persecution and hysteria. La Voisin, poison and occult intrigue. Catherine Monvoisin, better known as La Voisin, was central to the infamous affair of the poisons in 17th century France. A fortune teller and alleged sorceress, she provided love charms, poisons, and occult services to members of Parisian high society. Rumors claimed she performed black masses, summoned demons, and even sacrificed infants, though historians debate the veracity of these claims. La Voisin was executed in 1680, but her reputation endured, blending fact and myth into a terrifying story. The affair of the poisons demonstrates how witches could become symbols of societal anxiety and intrigue. Fear of witchcraft intertwined with politics, power, and moral panic, creating legends that transcended the real crimes of individuals. La Voisin's story serves as a chilling reminder of how myth amplifies terror. Tituba, the enslaved witch of Salem. The Salem witch trials of 1692 exemplify mass hysteria fueled by fear, religion, and social tension. At the center was Tituba, an enslaved woman from Barbados. When local girls began exhibiting strange fits and behaviors, she was accused of witchcraft. Under extreme pressure and threat of punishment, Tituba confessed to consorting with the devil, making pacts, and attending gatherings of witches. Her testimony ignited a wave of panic that engulfed Salem, resulting in over 200 accusations and 20 executions. Tituba's story underscores the intersection of race, gender, and societal fear. As an enslaved woman, she was vulnerable and easily scapegoated. Her coerced confessions highlight the lethal consequences of hysteria and prejudice in shaping public perception and legal outcomes. The Pendle Witches, Betrayal and Community Fear. In 1612, Lancashire's Pendle region became the site of one of England's most notorious witch trials. 12 people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft, blamed for curses, deaths, and crop failures. A haunting aspect of the trial was familial betrayal. Janet Device, a 9-year-old girl, testified against her relatives, leading to 10 executions. The Pendle case demonstrates how fear can fracture communities, turning neighbors and family members against one another. The terrifying legacy of the Pendle witches illustrates how superstition, poverty, and social tension could destroy lives and relationships, leaving legends that persist in folklore and cultural memory. Mother Shipton, Prophecy and Fear. Ursula Southill, better known as Mother Shipton, was born in 1488 in England. She became famous for her prophecies, predicting disasters, plagues, and technological developments like iron ships and flying machines. Though largely a folkloric figure, she was feared in her lifetime. Her knowledge of the future unsettled communities and challenged authorities, making her a target for suspicion. Mother Shipton's haunting legacy lies in her ability to inspire fear through foresight alone, showing how knowledge and independence could be conflated with witchcraft. Baba Yaga, folklore reflecting real fears. Baba Yaga, a figure from Slavic folklore, embodies historical anxieties about witches. Living in a hut on chicken legs and flying in a mortar while wielding a pestle, she is simultaneously threatening and wise. Scholars suggest that Baba Yaga may have been inspired by real women, midwives, herbalists, or outsiders, whose knowledge and independence provoke fear. Her legend demonstrates how folklore preserves societal anxieties, transforming real fears into mythic narratives that endure for centuries. Salem Witch Trials, Hysteria and Social Collapse. The Salem witch trials highlight how fear and suspicion can escalate into mass hysteria. In Salem, Massachusetts, accusations began when a group of young girls displayed strange fits and behaviors. Spectral evidence, claims of visions and supernatural influence, was accepted in court, amplifying panic. Accusations spread, ensnaring neighbors, friends, and family. 20 people were executed, and one man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death under stones. Salem shows the lethal consequences of fear unchecked by reason. Witchcraft accusations became instruments of social control, scapegoating, and communal paranoia. Patterns in witchcraft persecution. Across centuries, certain patterns emerge. Gendered targeting. Most accused witches were women, often those who were independent, widowed, or socially defiant. Religious justification. Witchcraft was framed as heresy or rebellion against God, legitimizing persecution. Scapegoating. Witches were blamed for unexplained deaths, diseases, or natural disasters. Torture and coerced confessions. Brutality ensured confessions, reinforcing fear and legend. Legend outlasting reality. Myths immortalized witches as terrifying figures long after their deaths. These patterns reveal that societal fear, more than supernatural truth, drove persecution. Witch hunts were instruments of social, religious, and political control. Cultural and historical legacy. The terrifying stories of witches have left an enduring cultural impact. Today, witches are often reimagined as symbols of empowerment, feminism, and spiritual wisdom. Wicca and neo-paganism reclaim the witch as healer and protector, transforming a symbol of fear into one of resilience. However, the historical reality cannot be ignored. Tens of thousands of women, and some men, were executed for witchcraft between the 15th and 18th centuries. Their stories remain warnings about hysteria, prejudice, and mass panic. Legends of witches continue to influence literature, film, and popular imagination, reminding us that myths can wield real-world power over communities and individuals. Beyond the flames. Witch hunts are among the darkest chapters of human history. From medieval Europe to colonial America, thousands of men and women were accused, tortured, and executed under suspicion of witchcraft. These hunts reveal not just superstition or a fear of magic, but the fragility of reason under societal fear, prejudice, and religious dogma. The historical witch hunt is a mirror reflecting humanity's capacity for fear-driven injustice. They expose how gender, social status, and religious conformity dictated who lived and who died. Witch hunts also illustrate the terrifying power of narrative. Myths, rumors, and accusations could distort reality, justify cruelty, and create enduring cultural archetypes that persisted long after the events themselves. By examining the lessons from witch hunts, we gain insight into the dynamics of hysteria, social control, and prejudice, and we can recognize patterns that continue to appear in human society today. The fragility of reason under fear. At the core of witch hunts lies fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the other, fear of disorder, and fear of personal or communal misfortune. Fear can distort rational thought, leading societies to act against evidence, justice, or compassion. During periods of crisis, war, famine, disease, or political instability, communities often sought scapegoats to explain misfortune. Women, particularly those who were independent, widowed, or otherwise outside societal norms, became convenient targets. Accusations of witchcraft offered an explanation for misfortunes that were otherwise uncontrollable, such as crop failures, epidemics, or sudden deaths. The Salem witch trials in 1692 exemplify this phenomenon. When a group of young girls began exhibiting strange behaviors, the community's collective fear escalated rapidly. Spectral evidence, visions, dreams, or hallucinations was accepted in court, amplifying panic. 20 people were executed, and one man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death. The rational judicial process collapsed under fear, demonstrating how hysteria can override reason. This pattern recurred across Europe. In Scotland, Germany, and England, accusations spread quickly during times of social, political, or religious turmoil. Fear, rather than evidence, determined outcomes. Witch hunts reveal the vulnerability of reason when communities allow panic to guide justice. Gender and social status as determinants of fate. Witch hunts reveal striking patterns of gendered persecution. Women constituted the majority of accused witches, often making up 70 to 90% of the victims in European hunts. Why? Women represented both societal vulnerability and perceived threat. Independent, outspoken, or unconventional women challenged patriarchal norms. Their knowledge, herbalism, healing, midwifery, was often reframed as dangerous or supernatural. Alice Keitler of medieval Ireland, for instance, was a wealthy, independent woman accused of witchcraft. Her autonomy and financial success made her a target, and her maid, Petronilla of Meath, was tortured and executed in her place. The gendered nature of witch hunts demonstrates how societal anxiety about women's roles could be weaponized, turning ordinary traits into evidence of criminality. Social status also dictated vulnerability. The poor, marginalized, or socially isolated were disproportionately accused. In England, the Pendle witches, members of two impoverished families, were accused of murder and cursing neighbors. A 9-year-old girl, Janet Device, testified against her family, resulting in 10 executions. The poor and powerless often had no allies, making accusations almost impossible to resist. Even within families, accusations could fracture relationships. Witch hunts expose the fragility of trust in communities, particularly under economic or social strain. These patterns show that fear and prejudice often intersected with power dynamics to determine life or death. Religious conformity and the church's role. Religion played a central role in many witch hunts. In Europe, accusations often framed witchcraft as heresy or rebellion against God. The church wielded authority to legitimize prosecutions, and religious texts and sermons reinforced beliefs about the devil, sin, and the dangers of magic. In Scotland, King James VI's obsession with witchcraft fueled hysteria. Agnes Sampson, a healer and midwife, was accused of raising storms against the king. Torture ensured confessions, and executions followed. Religious authority provided both the framework for belief in witchcraft and the justification for punishment. Similarly, the Salem witch trials were rooted in Puritan religious ideology. The belief that Satan actively influenced the world heightened paranoia and moral panic. Witchcraft was framed as not just criminal, but cosmic rebellion, a threat to divine order. In such contexts, reason and evidence were subordinated to religious fear, demonstrating the dangerous power of dogma in guiding social and legal judgments. The power of narrative and myth. One of the most enduring lessons of witch hunts is the power of narrative. Myths, rumors, and exaggerated accounts amplified fear and justified persecution. In many cases, accusations were based on hearsay, personal grudges, or misinterpreted behaviors. La Voisin, the French fortune-teller implicated in the affair of the poisons, exemplifies how legend can magnify fear. Whether or not she committed the acts attributed to her, her story became intertwined with myth, black masses, demonic rituals, and infant sacrifice. The narrative itself created a lasting aura of terror that outlived historical facts. In folklore, figures like Baba Yaga preserve societal anxieties about women's knowledge, independence, and power. Her legend reflects real historical fears, turning them into enduring archetypes of witches. Once a narrative took hold, it could shape cultural memory for centuries, demonstrating the enduring influence of storytelling in reinforcing societal fears. Torture and coerced confessions. Witch hunts reveal the cruel methods societies employed to extract confessions. Torture was used not only to punish, but to confirm pre-existing narratives of guilt. Victims, often innocent, were forced to confess to crimes they did not commit, sometimes implicating others in the process. Agnes Sampson endured pricking, binding, and other forms of torture until she confessed to meeting Satan and attending witches' gatherings. Tituba, enslaved in Salem, confessed under duress to fantastical accounts of pacts and rituals. These confessions became evidence, perpetuating cycles of accusation and hysteria. Torture demonstrates how fear and coercion could distort reality. When society accepts confessions obtained through pain as proof of guilt, reason collapses, and myth supplants truth. This lesson resonates beyond historical witch hunts, reminding us of the dangers of coercion, prejudice, and unquestioned authority. Scapegoating. Fear transformed into violence. Witch hunts illustrate how fear can be transformed into scapegoating. Communities sought explanations for misfortune, turning anxiety into action against perceived threats. Illness, death, crop failures, or natural disasters became evidence of witchcraft. In Pendle, England, economic hardship and superstition converged. Neighbors blamed the Demdike and Chattox families for misfortune. In Salem, unexplained illnesses and behavioral oddities were attributed to witches. Accusations became a way to make sense of chaos, placing blame on individuals rather than addressing systemic problems. Scapegoating reveals a fundamental human tendency. When societies confront uncertainty or suffering, they may target the vulnerable. Witch hunts offer a cautionary lesson about how fear can override empathy, reason, and justice. Lessons in hysteria and social control. Witch hunts were not just about superstition, they were instruments of social control. Accusations could enforce conformity, punish dissent, and maintain hierarchies. Independent women, marginalized individuals, or critics of authority were vulnerable. The Salem trials demonstrate how fear can manipulate legal and social systems. Accusations could be fueled by personal grudges or rivalries, while authorities exploited hysteria to consolidate power. Across Europe, prosecutions often reinforced patriarchal, religious, and political structures. Witch hunts teach that when fear dominates society, systems of law and morality can be weaponized against the powerless. The enduring cultural legacy. Witch hunts left a profound and lasting cultural legacy. They created archetypes of witches in folklore, literature, and popular culture. Figures like Alice Keitler, Mother Shipton, and La Voisin became legends. Their lives transformed into cautionary tales, horror stories, and symbols of societal fear. Modern interpretations of witches often reclaim them as symbols of empowerment, feminism, and spiritual knowledge. Wicca and neo-paganism, for example, reinterpret the figure of the witch as healer and protector rather than villain. Yet the lessons of history remain relevant. Myths born of fear continue to influence perception, prejudice, and social dynamics. The human cost of fear and prejudice. Witch hunts reveal the deadly consequences of fear, prejudice, and irrationality. Tens of thousands of men and women, mostly women, were executed in Europe and America over centuries. Their lives were destroyed not because of inherent evil, but because of societal anxiety, envy, and superstition. These events demonstrate the fragility of justice under fear. They highlight the dangers of allowing ideology, rumor, or hysteria to replace reason and evidence. Witch hunts teach that societal fear, if unchecked, can justify violence and oppression, leaving a legacy of suffering that echoes across generations. Lessons for today. The lessons of witch hunts extend beyond historical curiosity. They warn us about the consequences of fear-driven decision-making, scapegoating, and the manipulation of narratives. Witch hunts show how vulnerable groups, women minorities, the poor, can be targeted under social, religious, or political pressure. We also learn about the power of myth and narrative in shaping perception. Once a story of guilt or danger takes hold, It can persist long after facts are forgotten. Modern society still grapples with similar dynamics. Moral panics, false accusations, and social hysteria continue in various forms, from media sensationalism to systemic discrimination. Witch hunts remind us that vigilance, critical thinking, and empathy are essential for justice. Understanding historical patterns allows us to recognize the warning signs of fear-driven persecution and prevent history from repeating itself. The lives of these real witches reveal a world where fear, superstition, and prejudice could be deadly. Accused, persecuted, and sometimes executed, they became symbols of society's darkest anxieties. Their stories, filled with mystery, legend, and tragedy, remind us that history is often more terrifying than fiction. If these haunting tales of witches captivated you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into history's hidden and chilling truths. Remember, the past holds lessons that echo into the present, and sometimes the real stories behind legends are far darker than we could ever imagine.